do some introductions. You guys want to introduce yourselves? I'll just pass the microphone along.
Hi, I'm Matt Watson. I'm the Director of Technology and Strategy for NetApp across EMEA.
Hi, I'm Matt Davis. I'm Storage Lead for Dell EMC Commercial Business.
Hi, Simon Todd. I'm an EMEA Technical Specialist for HCI for VMware.
Hi, I'm Ryan Sayre. I am the Europe, Middle East and Africa Technical Lead for Pure Storage.
Mark Brady. I'm IBM. I've worked in storage for the last decade almost. Slightly nervous by the cast of characters we've got here today. Worked right through storage from fast stuff to slow stuff everywhere in between. Responsible for commercial business in the UK.
Ross Cooper Smith, Solution Engineer for Teja, who these days are a Western Digital brand.
And my name is George Christophe. I'm a Solutions Engineer for Citrix, focused towards the data collaboration area of Citrix. Please meet you all.
Thanks everyone. Do you think we're now at the point where we should be all flash and hyperconverged by default for new deployments? And what do you think will be needed to get us to that point if not? So, should we start with Pure?
I mean, the Germans would say Jein, but I would say probably no. I mean, given the audience, life science, you have an explosion of data. And if you looked at all of the opportunities that to store data on stuff, the gubbins of things, you would see that, you know what, flash is probably too expensive for data at real rest. But for actual workloads, when you want that high parallelization, absolutely. So it's not a toolbox full of hammers, everything looks like a nail. It's how you actually fit into the workload. And so not everything is flash. But you know what? For jobs that you actually want to get done really quickly, flash is the best.
I suppose no surprise to hear Pure say that. Would anybody else like to add their 2 pennies worth? Go on then.
I think it's an interesting question. It's a 2-part question. On the flash piece, I think for an awful lot of workloads we are now at a tipping point. So we're getting to the stage where flash technology is evolving almost faster than anything else in the storage market. It's driven by smartphones, it's driven by the laptops at home. The flash market is enormous. There's more investment, there's more development happening in that sector than anywhere else in storage. And what's happening is that capacities are increasing, prices are going down, reliability is increasing, and it's rapidly catching up with the cost per gigabyte figures of spinning disks for all 4 workloads. So I'm going to agree with Ryan. It's not perfect for every workload, but there's more and more situations where it's relevant. The hyperconverged piece, I think, is a separate story. Hyperconverged has had a huge amount of hyper growth over the last couple of years. And again, it can be very, very powerful in certain situations and deliver very, very good economics. But it's not a perfect fit for every workload. One of my colleagues in America used to work for Compaq, and he says, in 1986, we were selling storage as servers full of disks. And when you needed to add more storage, you added more disks until the server was full, and then you bought another server. If then the SAN came along and centralized all that storage, took away the wastage, allowed us to centralize the management of all these benefits, and the whole world moved towards centralized storage. It just made sense. So why are we moving back to 1986? And I think he made a very good point. There's definitely economic benefits to hyperconverged. There's definitely cases where it's a really, really good fit. But at the same time, there are some caveats to it. There are some limits in scalability, and we're starting to see early adopters of hyperconverged now starting to run into those issues and starting to say, you know what, we might need to dovetail this with some shared storage as well to meet our growth and needs in the future.
So it's clearly not one size fits all. I was actually going to ask Dell what their view was next, because it's good to get a big beast alongside the startups. So, Matt, please do.
Yeah, just to put into some context in terms of what Dell EMC is seeing from a storage point of view, we are seeing, we've got such a vast portfolio, we are seeing a decline against hyperconverged, but there's a tipping point, as you pointed out, in terms of scale against cost. But we also, in terms of flash versus hybrid approach, last year we saw our hybrid, so we term our hybrid or flash units a mixed workload, pretty flat in terms of sales. We saw a decline in just spinning disk by 14%, but our old flash sales were up by 27%. And the trajectory of that will move, by 2022, we're looking at more than 50%. From an industry point of view, will be all flash. And I think as technology, we saw a lot of technology benefits in a hybrid mode where we got tiering capabilities. Everybody thought tiering would go away, and it has, while we're single tier of flash. But what we're going to be moving to is multiple tiers of flash, so that tiering technology starts coming back in. So we believe that it will be a slow tick, but definitely there's more movement. But it's back to the application, the workloads that we can play with. That's what we're seeing.
So this is going to maybe sound a little bit different. I think talking about storage is just way too narrow a focus. I think I'm actually really glad you combined the two sessions, the cloud and storage session, because I don't think you can have those two conversations separately. I know it will be different for most people, but the reality is, take surveys with a pinch of salt as much as you want, but I think there's something in there if you kind of look at them. And there are only 1% of companies are not looking at cloud. 99% of companies are looking at how do they use cloud. And I think when we start saying storage, or it's flash, or it's spinning disk, that's just one very small facet of how do we deal with data. And I think where you've got to start is by saying, what is data? And I don't know how many of you have really thought that through. Everything is data. It's not just what gets created by an application, it is the application. It's the virtual machine, it's the operating system. It is everything. And what we've got to start doing is looking, well, what are the characteristics of the application and the data it's creating, and start making good decisions about where we put that. That might be flash, it might be disk, it might be in the cloud, it might be hyper-converged, it might be converged, but it's looking at what does this application actually require, and then making sure that whatever you build gives you the ability to move that application to the appropriate kind of place, whether that's on-premise or off-premise, as the kind of characteristics of that workload dictate. But I also think we're going to get very fixated on flash. Flash is such a broad topic. Everyone thinks SSD, it's not just SSD. We've got storage class memories coming through, nanosecond performance technologies coming through. So get ready for some of the most rapid pace of change you have ever seen in the industry. 15 terabyte flash today, we're about to launch 30, 60 next year, 120 the year after. In the next 4 years, we will have 1/4 petabyte solid state disk. That's the world you have to start getting ready for. And it will change lots and lots of things.
There's so many directions we can go in from that. Which is great, thank you. I actually had, I think there's all sorts of questions and topics about cloud, right? And management and how you make decisions around this, how you look at the workloads. But I suppose the last bit was really interesting. What do the panel think are the next big innovations coming in this space that might transform the way we deliver computing, the way we use that to process data? You clearly just mentioned some around, larger capacity, higher performance, density, all the rest of it. And the bit around sort of the convergence of memory and persistent storage is really interesting, because that could completely change how computing works. Who'd like to comment on that? Sure.
I think the biggest excitement that we see in the computing or solving problems and managing information is the application of artificial intelligence in these workloads that we really had to be finite and very specific in working with computation. We've been really excited by working with GPU vendors and FPGA vendors, and we've created solutions alongside NVIDIA where you're using artificial intelligence algorithms to solve problems. And artificial intelligence, well, the traditional terminology of it, it's been around for 60 years, but the fact that we have 3U boxes with tens of thousands of cores to be able to create neural networks, that's unprecedented. Now we're able to do things that a human could do in a second. That's anything that you can think of that you can do in a second, artificial intelligence can already do today. And that's going to absolutely transform the way that we interact with each other as humans. And it's absolutely eye-opening, but the way that we manage information is going to be really, really interesting as we move forward in the next 2 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's all getting more complex to try and map out, because it's all diversifying, because there's so much more possibility. Go on then. Yeah, sure.
Just to answer that, we're seeing machine learning, AI, and we're building that into our products. So when we ingest data, we know what to do with it better. So we launched some new technology this week at Dell Technology World. So if you look at what's been pushed out, our new high-end storage is all based on machine learning and AI. So it's definitely moving that way. I think it's just a catalyst of change that we're seeing from what the user demands. I was talking about this earlier. If you look at the profile of where the money or the decisions are made within business, it's traditionally now moved outside of IT. So it's how do we align as IT organisations and vendors to map onto what the business outcomes are for our customers, because the purse strings are being held by 80% outside of IT at the moment. So I think we as vendors are following and innovating in that space, but yeah, it's a different world in a year's time. So if you did this session in 12 months' time, we'd have different answers for that.
And we probably should. I'm interested in what IBM thinks, because you're a full stack supplier focusing on everything from machine learning and AI down to the storage and flash system and all those sorts of things. I mean, what's your take on some of this and how we start to unpick it? Where we should focus first? Is it again about the workload and the use of AI and those types of techniques? We start from there.
Yeah, and as we said, there's a lot can be discussed. There's a fair amount that can be put into a conversation like this. I guess from IBM's point of view, we would consider ourselves to be cognitive first. It's quite surprising when I explain to people that we're the number one software-defined storage organisation in the world, and we're the number 2 storage organisation overall. When you consider what the future holds for cognitive AI, when you consider where the technology is moving in order to do some of this parallel computing, to get to this artificial intelligence, you've really got to get access to the data. And when we talk about flash, we can't really talk about that without having a conversation around tiers of storage. When we talk about active storage, we can go right down the spectrum now to object storage, and we can say often what traditionally happens is the technology obviously pushes ahead the industry, but everyone's limited by budget. I specifically sold flash storage for 2 years as a brand specialist, and we had some really good fun going after those low latency transactional workloads. Moving on from that, flash began almost to commoditize to an extent, and you get to a position where now the question really is, where do I place my data for most business benefit? We now talk in IBM in terms of multi-cloud. And so a couple of years ago, when we were having a conversation about cloud, we talk about public cloud, we talk about hybrid cloud, and now in a position where we say everyone's reached cloud in some way, shape or form, whether that's private on-premise cloud, whether you've got multi-vendors in that cloud strategy. The key question we need to be asking now really is, how do you do the data placement? How do you put policies in place to be able to move that data to where it needs to be at the right time? How do you have it residing on an efficient tier such that your investment almost pays back? It's great to think about where we're going with flash storage into the future, but often it comes at a premium. And actually, if you need fast access to that storage, your storage had better reside pretty close to where the server is in fact, or become a logical extension of that server somehow, if that's the game that you're playing, and it really is then horses for courses. So everyone's, I'm sure, heard of Watson and the success we've been having there in our cognitive story. IBM's view is we are cognitive first, but actually the underlying storage is key to that. Data management and protection comes along with that underlying storage. And really, when you're considering storage for the future, people don't want to be in these 3 to 5 year refresh cycles of buying appliances that they're locked into now and they can't get off of. Consider transforming what you have with software defined, and then think about modernising into the future. And for new workload, where is that best placed? With this multi-cloud strategy, how do you get the most out of it?
So I suppose that takes on quite nicely to what actually is software defined, and what are the tools and capabilities you need to try and deal with that. Because there's no way you're going to manage all those workloads manually, that you're going to be able to cope with that multi-cloud environment with a sort of manual hand-cranking approach, deciding where you put stuff and all the rest of it. So Yes, clearly, I can see now something that talk to me. It's actually, obviously that's your main strategy. But just as well, because you've already had a little bit of stuff to say, I think it's interesting to hear sort of Citrix's take, because actually the access to all of this is really key as well. And there's a sort of layer on top of this, so how do you actually open it up to your IT, outside your IT department, enable your end users to access these workloads? So, I mean, do you want to just talk a little bit around your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, if you traditionally look at Citrix, and everyone knows Citrix for remote access, okay, historically, that was kind of the bread and butter of why people used to buy Citrix. And we continue to do that, and customers continue to buy Citrix for that as well. We've got a lot of customers on premises. They're looking to go to cloud. We're painting the journey for them, so we're supplying them with a cloud platform to have a hybrid approach to kind of support their on-premises and start using and subscribing to cloud services. And with that as well is the data is still on premises a lot of the time. So people think, right, I'm going to move some workloads, but my data is on network shares, which is sitting on storage. How do I get there as well? And again, another service that we provide is a collaboration service and a migration strategy to start moving from, I don't want to take it away from the local kind of storage appliances there, but ultimately start bursting and using cloud storage for your data. Not everything can go to cloud storage. Again, what you said, things have to stay close to the servers depending on what the requirements are. But we're finding customers with unstructured data, with access to existing systems like SharePoint, they want to consolidate everything. And yes, we can consolidate and give you access to those multiple areas from different desktops and different workloads, but also how do we manage that and be intelligent of what's going on? So the artificial intelligence and the analytics is key to see the behaviors of users and what they're using, how they're using it, who they're sending data to, and that is what ultimately IT want a single place to go. They don't want this fragmented infrastructure. So all those services that we provide and the analytics gives our customers the opportunity to start moving some data away, some workloads away from on-premises and leveraging cloud. And again, there has to be a journey. We can't just say, stop everything there and take it to cloud tomorrow, because that's not reality. So we're going to live in a hybrid world, I think, for a while, but our customers are starting to say, let's go cloud first.
Right. I know we need to talk a bit more about sort of tools and management there a bit, but I just think you touched on something interesting. There's these overlapping concepts of hybrid and multi-cloud. I'm just interested if any of you would like to sort of try and unpick that and say, what is the difference between hybrid and multi-cloud, and what should people, or where should people focus on each of those? Where's the benefit to each of those approaches?
Looking at me. I'm never shy of saying something.
And so I'm not going to plug NetApp. I've got a session this afternoon, so if you want to hear more about some of the things we're doing, then please come along. I want to give you just some perspectives. Software-defined, I think, is one of those terms that has been completely destroyed by the industry. If you actually look back at what software-defined means, it means programmable infrastructure. Unfortunately, what most people take as software-defined is the lowest possible value, which is running on commodity hardware. That is not what software-defined is. Or even if it is a facet of it, it's a tiny, tiny little facet of it. The one thing that I think is important, though, is if you do approach something and say, is it software-defined, then you should be thinking about, if it is, then can I run it on-premise, on my own hardware, on commodity hardware, in the cloud? And can I have a consistent way of programming, of automating across all of those environments? I also think we've come up with too many terms for cloud. It's cloud. We don't need to call it multi-cloud and private cloud and hybrid cloud and this cloud and every other cloud. It's cloud. And I would go so far as to say hybrid I'm okay with, because hybrid just means that you're using lots of clouds. I just think we've come up with too many terms. So I don't differentiate multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, cloud. It's cloud, and you may be using a number of them. And I think we get away from too many terms and complexities on this. It's my opinion.
Yes, so that's one of the things that I completely agree with. A cloud is a cloud, right? And that's one of the things that VMware has been working on, whether you have your private cloud or whether you're in the public cloud, how you manage that should be the same. It should be a seamless management interface, and that's one of the things that Cloud Foundation brings as well. Whether you use IBM Cloud, whether you use VMware and AWS, if you have Cloud Foundation on-premise, you're managing your public cloud in exactly the same way. That's the biggest challenge that I see customers have with going from their private cloud to the public cloud is they're using a totally different management interface to manage their public cloud. Customers don't like that. They want the seamless approach, they want the same interface. How I manage it here is exactly the same way as I want to manage it here. That's how I see customers demanding their cloud, whether it be public or private. But again, I agree completely, a cloud is a cloud.
Well, clouds then, does the concept of cloud native exist in that case? What does cloud native mean if there's no difference between all of these things? And if everything is just cloud, then what actually is cloud as opposed to traditional IT?
The way that I see cloud is when people migrate to the cloud, it's getting rid of the stink of 1994 to 1997. And so then Spice Girls were wonderful, right? And that was a great era to be able to go into each configuration option and say, yeah, I really know my networking, my storage, and all of that. But the infrastructures itself, it's gotten so much bigger that you can't afford to be pedantic and you've graduated from playing with SCSI jumpers to configs. You have to manage everything by orchestrated API. And so the way it's the simplest, lowest common denominator to be able to abstract, this is my workload, this is how I want to deal with it, and this is making life simple kind of moving forward. So it's very similar to a pendulum swing. It's not going to be all in one side or all in the other. It's going to be a blend. And I see a lot of organizations just wanting to get rid of that 1990s stink and clear out their data center, get something nice in there, and then go, okay, what do we care about having on-prem, and what do we care about putting in the cloud? There's some sort of phrase about, it's something like, it's really cheap to fail in the cloud, but it's really expensive to succeed. We're cloud users ourselves. We have a very large AWS bill. And we did that because we wanted to leverage certain things. And so now we have a blend. And that's what it's all about, is being able to choose and migrate back and forth. Not that you're locked into some, Lantronix system that you have to maintain for the next 20 years and you're still having to deal with really obscure commands. Sorry, I'm getting flashbacks.
There was obviously some trauma there.
Just to extend the point from before, I think looking across cloud, if we all agree cloud is cloud, it's about this API-driven, SLA-specific definition. When we consider things like DevOps today, and people wanting to grab a hold of a copy of something just to test it and throw it away, the storage admins have evolved to a point now, I believe, where we're no longer looking at them having this fine-grained hold and control over every single last bit of what exists. It's about that API-driven approach to provision out what's needed, and maybe even handing some of that off now to the end user in a way that's safe. I mean, the storage guys never really want to give up on the storage, but being able to allow end users to provision that themselves and drive it through a consistent interface.
Joe?
Oh, we've got a question. Excellent.
Okay, you sold me. I'm a techie. I love what you're selling. But how do I really push this to people who don't understand the technologies, who find too many acronyms, like too many different clouds? I really want to get them to understand and be as excited as I am about these products. But all I'm hearing is tech, which is great for me. But how do I sell this to management?
Management wants return on their investment, right?
Yeah.
So to be able to speak about business outcomes and TCO, in legitimate terms, not just here's an Excel spreadsheet. The whole pain of, your array is end of life, well, I'm going to give you an extortionate price to renew your support, or you're going to have to rebuy all your storage. That's gone. So once you make it predictable, and you say, okay, here are the applications, here's the credibility that each vendor has in my specific business domain, that's when the conversation gets much more reasonable. So you're no longer having the vendors go, this is how many IOPS a second, or how many, you're no longer going to have people that say, this is my speeds and feeds, it's up to you to justify that. No, you're going to have, okay, what are your use cases that you've been successful that are similar to mine, and how can I translate that into business value? It's that direct translation, and that's been the vendors evolving themselves. So it's a vocabulary thing on our end that helps you be able to speak to your CFO, to your IT, to your CTOs and the CEOs that say, yeah, is it worth it to invest in?
Does that?
Just going to add to that, I think it's about choice, it's about interoperability and choice, making sure that they come together. I think you take public cloud, you take an AWS or an Azure, it's very much an AWS cloud or an Azure cloud, and there's, that cloud grid of being able to move services based on demand and cost, and at the time that doesn't exist. So cloud gets overused. It's not a place, it's a form of operating IT. So you have if you're an internal infrastructure, that's your own private cloud. It's as simple as that. I think it was touched on earlier about having the workloads close to the compute. And I think if you look at the majority of customers, they have 85-90% of their predictable workload. It's cheaper to run on premise, rather than putting it onto the cloud. So it's about having a blend and about having choice, and we're seeing that. We're seeing, I talked about this earlier. We're seeing customers that have gone out to public cloud to try to scale it, and there is a cost problem, so they're coming back. We talked to a lot of customers about cloud, and do you have a cloud exit strategy? What's that look like? How long is it going to take you to regress out? What's the cost of managing how you do that? So it's a great place to run to, but you need to be careful about what you put out there, and it's about understanding the workloads. Absolutely, it's the key. What service are you trying to deliver? Where should it be?
Just have one. No, please.
Yeah,
Just got another question from the audience, by the way. So.
Okay, so just to expand on that a little bit further, so I deal with a lot of customers who've embraced their public cloud. I mean, we have to differentiate between the two, but they still retain workloads on premise because they're not allowed, from security reasons and things like that, to run that in the public cloud. But what I see from a lot of organizations is one big expense to any organization is test and dev. So they have developers that need infrastructure to actually develop the applications. The public cloud brings them the flexibility of elasticity. So, this month we need X amount of compute and X amount of storage for these developers, but next month we won't have that cycle. So therefore this month we'll expand our capability in the public cloud, and then next month we'll retract that. So we're not having to invest in on-premise infrastructure for test and dev. That gives them huge flexibility. And going back to the CFO, having that off the balance sheet that, we don't actually need to have that hardware on-premise, we can rent that hardware and not have to invest in that from a complete standpoint. That's a huge benefit to customers as well.
Yeah, I think similarly there's ones around simulation that are quite similar, aren't there? Where you need to run, say, 30,000 calls or something for 5 minutes, rather than running 5,000 for 3 hours or something, and being able to get that cycle time down, that can have a real impact. We could come back to this, but there was a comment or question from the gentleman over here.
Yeah, there's a comment, because this cloud discussion, when I was your age, we used to call them mainframes. The other question I have is, we always talk about this new technology. The technology has been the same for the last 80 years. It's called digital. It's 0 or 1. And I don't know what's new about it. I think we have to start thinking digital.
So thank you for that comment, and I may not look old enough, but I used to work on mainframes, so I know a little bit of history. That's where virtualization started, as we all know. So I guess kind of 2 comments. I actually detest the phrase information technology or IT, because I actually think that terminology takes us back to the days of yore, when IT was the kind of, that closet downstairs, or a group of people that kind of isolated themselves from everybody else and weren't really enabling the business. They were there to make sure that we had email and we had some of these basic services. And I actually think we've either got to leave that behind and come up with something new that's much more encompassing of the fact that it is a critical business capability, or we have to accept that that is now more of a facilities type function, and we need something new that is therefore much more closely related to the business. Maybe that's where DevOps has started to come through. Maybe that is that kind of piece that's connecting the two.
But do you not think, that with the sort of commoditization, because it's not new, but it is more commoditized, right? You get more power for less money, essentially, is the big change, isn't it? And so suddenly everything has a digital counterpart, you know, your home, your fridge, your door, and that suddenly means there are these new, because there's more data about more things, that's the change really, isn't it?
Yeah, data is always about things. Data is always about something or other, and I call that something for an entity. And the information about it is its attributes. So all information is attributes about entities, and there are no exceptions. And there are two types of attributes, those you can measure and those you assign. And entities make relationships. Entities belong to an entity type. And there are physical and non-physical entities. A non-physical entity example is function, task, action, objective. You've never seen any of those. I think we have to try and think very, very clearly what we are talking about.
Ben, if you want to...
So I'm only going to kind of maybe combine two things. I'm actually a big fan of run, grow and transform. You know, when I'm talking to people about, you know, how do we start at least trying to work out what it is that we are doing. Most organisations, if you come and look at the numbers, spend about 75% of their budgets, their IT budgets, on simply running what they have. About 15%, maybe 20% on actually doing sort of growth things that we could be doing better, and possibly around 5% on doing things that are actually transformative, things that would fundamentally make a difference. And a little bit linked to your point, I think once you start kind of almost having run, grow and transform, you can start identifying, well, what data, what applications sit where. And then how do we start to do those in a different way? If we've got a whole bunch of stuff that's fitting and running, that's costing us a lot of money, are we the right people to be doing this? Is there a better way? Is that something that we go and get us from software as a service? If it's in grow, we know it has something that we might be able to do better. Can we invest more? If it's in transform, what is it? And what is it that we could bring to bear? Is that where we start tapping into an AWS or an Azure or an IBM or whoever it might be to do something fundamentally new? That's not perfect, but at least if you sort of categorize around run, grow and transform, you're starting to look at, well, what is the data that we've got and which of these categories does it kind of fit within? It's a very high level though.
So we don't have much time left. Are there any more questions from the audience?
Question about AWS. Just about everyone mentions AWS. We all know about it, and we all know from 2016 onwards, the start of 2017, how custom built servers, networks, infrastructure, everything they do is. How much do we really know about it? How difficult is it to get a representative to come and talk to us and questions of that sort?
Well, that's a good question, and actually maybe we should do it for the Expo in 6 months' time. It's not hard, and you can go and visit Microsoft and Amazon data centers. They'll absolutely take you there as customers. They are transparent if you go and have a conversation with them. Obviously, they're always going to be selling to you. So are all these gentlemen. So that's the nature of it all. But you absolutely, they'll come and talk about it, and they have a sort of narrower and different focus than you'll get from some of these participants. I think one thing we've not talked about today, and it's not surprising really, given the nature of this event and the participants, is the sort of enough of the software and application development focus. Because I think when you're talking about cloud native, then the way in which that you transform application development by switching to APIs rather than architectures built on the idea of an operating system, that can be quite fundamental. So we haven't managed to mention PaaS or containers or things like AWS Lambda or Azure Functions, I suppose Cloud Foundry from a Dell EMC, VMware perspective, those sorts of things. There's lots of stuff like that that is quite transformative and is absolutely where the AWS and Microsoft are focused, and not at all on a lot of the stuff we've just discussed. And that's one of the challenges around discussing this topic, is it's so broad. But it'd be really good to get that different perspective, I agree.
I mean, we all want to solve problems, so containers or abstraction or continuous deployment or offload using exotic hardware or software or whatever, it's just all tools to solve the problems. But we're much more connected in actually discussing the problems together, whereas we had little islands of innovation all over the world 20 years ago.
What do you think is the bit bringing all that together? Like how does that come together?
I think that we're globally competitive. My British accent's been banned by the local office, so I can't use it, but we're living in a global world. I mean, I married a Brazilian-born German. I'm an American. I cover all sorts of geographies. But the chorus of innovation, the problems that are being solved, and really the place that we need to get to, it's a human thing. It's not a cultural thing or a specific industry thing. So I don't know. It's nice to be an ambassador of technology and say, we're all in it together.
So I suppose one final thing it'd be good to get you guys' views on is, given we're in a much more sort of fast evolving, complex threat landscape, you've got new regulation like GDPR coming along. I mean, what's your take on how the storage market and the sort of cloud market needs to evolve and how it can help with dealing with those challenges?
Well,
you're still holding the microphone.
I still have the microphone. I mean, this is an operation issue in which you're dealing with law and human constraints. I think that the way that we have it is it's very easy to code for the letter of the law, but it's difficult to code for the spirit of the law. And as we start to add in cognitive or artificial intelligence, or basically interpretations that are proxies of what we care about as humans, technology will not be our enemies. It will actually be our friends and actually advocate for the quality of life. So I don't think that it's a storage problem for laws or privacy or anything like that. I think that we're going to be involving a kind of new level of technology, which is AI.
Okay, so let me take it down level. Does cloud actually help with those problems or hinder them? Let's go to Simon.
That depends. Depends on location for a start. I mean, information within certain countries, that the information can't leave that country. So if you're going to the public cloud, that may inhibit where you can actually deploy public cloud services for your organization. A lot of it comes down to, for me, what are the business requirements? What's driving the need for you to actually do this from a business perspective? And a lot of people I speak to, they actually, because I speak to people from a technology focus, rather than the people that are higher up, and they can't answer those questions because it's the people higher up that have to make those decisions as, how is this going to impact my business? What are the drivers to do this? Is this a necessity? Obviously GDPR is a big thing. I was asked a question yesterday, is how is that going to affect us when we leave the EU? Well, I think it's something that we're going to embrace, but we'll probably have our own version of it when we actually leave the EU. So again, it comes down to business requirements. Data locality is a critical point. Data can't leave certain boundaries, and that's the challenge that I see with public cloud.
What's George's take from Citrix? How can the cloud help with those challenges of security and data protection?
I think a consolidation of access is probably one key thing, but again, it does go down to human process. And so you can put all the controls in place, you can give that single point of access, monitoring, analytics, all those services which can look at your whole kind of infrastructure as such, anything going in and out, but it's down to humans as well. So if your users start doing other things, using shadow IT, using other systems, you've got issues there. So it's both human and platform and how you manage it and how you secure it. It's not the cloud can just solve your problems. It's about how you architect your infrastructure and manage it. That's how I think of it.
But thank you very much. That was a really good conversation. And I look forward to speaking to you more later. Thanks, everyone.